All right, so we're going to do the families chapter today because we're getting towards the end of the course now. A lot of the stuff you see in the family chapter is probably stuff you've read in other chapters already, and they're just getting into it a little deeper now. All up through this, you've seen things about how to bring families into your environment in the classroom, having them bring things that represent their home culture. You've had, we've talked about how to incorporate music and anti-bias stuff and reaching out to families and providing resources. So today we're going to get into talking about sharing information with families and maintaining confidentiality. And then we're going to talk about practices that surround parent conferences. So two kinds of parent meetings, one in which the parent comes to the director or you and says, we need to talk. And then the other one where you have it scheduled for once a year, twice a year, where you have a chat about where their child is developmentally and next steps. All right. So this is a participation slide, y'all. So why should we share information with families in the first place?
Educate them.
What's the purpose?
To see where their kids are at, and then if they're not, well, basically, in my opinion, just so we could practice the same stuff. That way we're all on the same page with the kids. Because if you do one thing at daycare and the family does one thing at home, it's hard to make sure and like keep like a little eye on where they're at.
And also I'm hearing that providing that consistency for the child across the day,
Yeah.
Having all their people know each other, all their grown-ups know each other. All right, so just think about what kind of information do you normally ask for from a family? What do you need to know about them or about how they're raising their child?
Concerns about the, any issues with the babies, how they grow the baby, because sometimes the families, they don't share the same information at the center. They want to do their way, but our idea is let's give it information about what is our values from the center, and we listen then, and then we can work together and be kind to the child.
Yep, that's good general information from the family, of course. I know you have your enrollment forms and your emergency forms that have all that good contact information. What kind of daily information do you want to have from the family?
How do they sleep at night? I know for my class, that's one of the questions.
Definitely.
Yeah, how do they sleep at night? How do they eat?
Mm-hmm.
Whether depending on breakfast or dinner or in between. How are they feeling?
Is there anything new happening in their life? Grandparents coming to visit or things that can affect how the child reacts at daycare? So the last question, what kind of information do you think families need from you, the teacher? And I know you do a daily information card on most of these children.
It's in my center we did the daily report. We put how many bottles they had, the kind of food we offered to them, how many we changed diapers, how was the day, was easy day, has some issues, they was sick or any concern.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to that?
If their child is not themselves.
Okay.
I say they're, I guess not necessarily feeling ill, but just
Yeah.
if they're just
A
out
change
of their
of behavior.
norm. Yeah.
Definitely. All right. How do you currently share information with families? So I'm going to try to exit out so I can type in this. And I already put daily log because I know that's one that we're required to do. But how else do you share information with families?
I tell them, or I send them pictures so that they actually can see it. And
How do you send them pictures, Alicia?
well, some of my parents, either on our Facebook page, or we do have some where I know for me, like I'm friends with one of my kids, so like I'll send her pictures of her kid if she's doing something funny, like, you know, just so she could see how she is throughout the day.
Is
Then
it all through Facebook or texting or what?
Well, some of them are through texting, and then some of them are through Facebook. If we have a release form from the parents, we'll put up. Well, we're trying to put up stuff of the kids and how their days are. That way, yeah, you can tell the parent the kid is having a good day, but sometimes they just want to see it. Or the dailies, of course. But other than that, and then I talk to them and I let them know when they come to pick them up or drop them off.
Email, bulletin board.
Ooh, I even spelled that correctly. I'm so proud. Bulletin board. Did you say email, Sylvia?
Yes, emails, because sometimes they send me emails in the afternoon.
Okay.
Handouts, if it's a certain topic.
And do you do the handouts? Do you hand them face to face? Do you put them in their bag? Do you put them on a bulletin board?
All of the above.
All right. So in bag, face to face.
Newsletters. I used to do the weekly newsletters to let us know in advance what is my plan for the week.
That's awesome. Waiting a few seconds, see if anybody has anything else they'd like to add. Okay. All good ways to send information to families. I especially like that you mentioned the release form with the Facebook, because putting up pictures of children online without family permission doesn't end well. All right. All right, here are some other options that are talked about in your chapter. A family welcome packet. And that usually your center will have one for the whole school, but sometimes a classroom teacher will also have a welcome packet, especially if they're in an infant classroom, talking about this is how we do feedings in our room, this is our daily schedule, these are times you're able to come in and breastfeed, or this is where you go to breastfeed. This is how we do pickup. This is how we do safe sleep practices. So a family welcome packet, something like that. And orientation can be for your classroom or for the whole center. And that's where you have the families come in and tour the center, hopefully talk to you and get to know you and start making that connection where they can start trusting you as a teacher. An enrollment interview, which they also follow up immediately with a home visit. I don't know if any of you have ever done a home visit before, but that is usually before your child starts at the center. Usually 2 people, the teacher and assistant, or teacher and assistant director or director, will go out to the family's home and share their welcome packet and get some information about the family and talk about, oh, we do this in our classroom, we have a home area, are there any things any containers or anything of food that you use at home that you'd like us to incorporate into the home area? Get pictures of the child for their cubbies, and just set up that initial trust bond. But home visit is usually for programs that, so like Pre-K for SA does a home visit. At the lab school I worked at, they did home visits. I believe Head Start does home visits. They're usually larger programs that do that. But a good developmentally appropriate practice to do. Always good to have a second person with you, however, when you're going into a new environment. One of you had mentioned talking face-to-face at drop-off and pickup. Definitely something they mention in the book. And that's harder for some of you, where you had mentioned to me before that families just stop at the classroom door and kind of hand the baby over the door. So trying to figure out how to make that a very meaningful meeting between the adults. Sylvia mentioned the newsletters, and we'll talk about that more in a bit. The bulletin board, that was mentioned. The website, very similar to Alicia's Facebook thing that y'all were doing. Software, does anybody have software at their center where you put photos or daily notes to families?
No.
Okay. With the Shared Services Alliance that most of your centers are in, that might be something that comes up. There's also free software or applications like Remind, where you can send a text out to all your families at once and let them know, you know, don't forget bathing suits tomorrow for water play type things. We had mentioned phone calls, text, emails, conferences, which according to Texas Rising Star should be happening twice a year for maximum points. And that's where you stop and sit down with the family and discuss their child's progression while they've been in your classroom, and where they are developmentally and what their next steps are, and then discuss things that you have collected about the child. So maybe their artwork, some photos of fun things they've been doing, and discuss with the parents any concerns that they might have. And then the last part that was mentioned in your textbooks were parent meetings and workshops. So parent meetings and workshops could be as simple as the first Friday in a month from 6 to 7:30 or 6 to 7. The toddler teacher will be in the, I'm trying to think if you all have a gym. If you do, you know, a big space that can meet with families and have a chat about what's going on in the classroom. It could be that the infant teacher holds a workshop on back to sleep and safe sleep, sudden infant death syndrome, how to prevent it by what to put in the crib and how the baby should be put to sleep. So that kind of thing. Did anybody have questions about any of those options that were listed in the textbook? Okay. All right, so I scoured the internet trying to find some really good examples for bulletin boards. And I hate to say that I had a really hard time finding bulletin boards that I thought were really, really good, which means that once you get a really, really good bulletin board put together, you should definitely take a picture and put it online, because we need the resources. This is not, I'm looking really close to try to read some of the things on here. I don't think it's an infant classroom. based on the pictures of the children in there, maybe 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. But what are some things we're noticing about this bulletin board that might be helpful for families?
The pictures of the teacher.
Pictures.
Definitely. Who's the adult that I'm supposed to drop off my child with? That's really helpful, especially if you have a new adult in there, or if grandma's dropping off today and she usually doesn't, type thing. So they know which adult is the correct adult.
The schedule, I think that's a schedule.
Those
Mhm. Announcements, schedules. I notice
Lesson plan.
The
lesson plan, yeah.
That's a lesson plan. What else?
It looks like they might have some resources as well
Yeah.
for parents to pick up. One fun thing I've seen at the pre-K for SA centers are a little bio of the teacher, or some of our centers now are doing both teachers work together to create one statement about their classroom, about their teaching philosophy. That's kind of cool. If it was me, I'd probably put the teacher's name right underneath the picture so you know who is who. And it looks like they have some times that shows you when the teachers are in the classroom. So it looks like Mrs. Moss is there from 7 to 4 and Miss Kirk is there from 8 to 5. And it looks like they're wanting to hire another teacher from 9 to 6. Anything else jump out about this one for you before we move on to the next one?
No.
Okay. And this one, for some reason, appeals to me, even though it's not filled in all the way. I like, I guess, the structure of it, but what are you seeing that might be different from the last one on this?
Dry erase board.
The dry erase board, and did you notice what they have on the bottom left for it? What we did today. So that's kind of cool to share. So the family, when they do pickup, can, instead of asking the child, what did you do today? They can look at that. And you could write something about, ask your child about what they painted today, or ask your child about sand play today, to, you know, get those conversations started. It has notes up there that the teacher can write if they need something, or reminder to bring the swimsuits again. They have their schedule at the top, probably have their, I don't know if that's the teacher's philosophy statement or about her classroom. And it looks like they have family pictures too,
Yeah.
which I think is lovely.
I think they have this, like, the cafeteria menu.
Mm-hmm.
Or-
Okay. So just some different ideas to keep in mind. Remember, if you have your bulletin board inside the classroom, you have to be really super aware of those push pins, because if those suckers fall off, that's a nasty choking hazard.
Okay.
And you know a baby gonna find the first push pin that falls off. So tape might be better inside the classroom. All right, so for those of you that have not done a newsletter before, I found an example, and it looks like the name of this program was Joyful Noise. I think it was a church program. And it has a note from the teacher at the top. It has the theme of what they're working on in the classroom. What else are you seeing that might be good for families on this?
Birthdays of the childs.
Pictures of the children?
No, when the birthdays of the child, when they had Celebration for birthdays.
Oh, birthdays. I'm sorry. I misheard you, Sylvia.
No, that's okay. Because that is important to know the parents who is birthday. So
Okay.
I put it that too in the newsletter.
Okay. And this one talks about who's going to be transitioning up on September 1st. It says to clarify who will be transitioning, children who will be 1 by September 1st, walking steadily and eating table food. So there you go. They talk about their walks, what they do on their walks, what they've seen on the walks recently. Apparently they've seen a police dog named Lady. And I like at the bottom things, the teacher put things that they'd like for the classroom that they don't have. So Meyer gift cards, that's like HEB up north, y'all. Meyer gift cards, puff style tissue, which I don't know what that is. And unscented wipes. I guess puffs, tissues, I don't know. You can also put reminders on there. Remember, we label our bottles with the child's last name and first name, and we put the date. And these are ways you can participate in the classroom. If you were to send, okay, 2 things. If you just make this newsletter to post outside your classroom and that's as far as it goes, you can put all the baby's pictures on there and it's fine. But what happens when you send it home with families? Are you still allowed to put all the baby's pictures?
No.
So that's when Alicia mentioned getting the photo releases. So before you share like birthday information outside the classroom or the children's names, what they're doing in the classroom, specific names or pictures, you have to get parent permission. All right, so going into confidentiality, and this is, we always talk about how you should phrase things positively for children. The first one, however, is not framed positively, and I'm sorry that I just didn't do it correctly for you. So this is a do not share information about children with people who are not their people. So if it's not their parent or guardian, if it's not with their teacher or the daycare director, you shouldn't be sharing the information. Now, exceptions to that are if CPS comes in and wants to do an interview with you about that child, by all means share information, because that's a legal requirement. But if another family comes in and says, oh, we want to invite this person out for dinner, or we want to send them a thank you note, you can't just hand over the information. We just talked about the newsletter, so you can't post children's photos or videos online or hand them out to families without permission, written permission. The reason you want to have it written is, let's say that Mandy gets dropped off by Dad, and you ask Dad, can I put Mandy's picture on the newsletter? And Dad says, sure. You do it, you hand out the newsletter, Mandy's mom sees the newsletter, or Mandy's grandma sees the newsletter and says, why is Mandy's picture on here? I didn't say you could do that. And you could say, well, Dad told me. Well, maybe Dad was distracted and he doesn't remember, or maybe he doesn't want to get in trouble with his mom. So always have it in writing so you can pull it out and say, here's my permission. And of course they can take the permission back, but it's good to have it to begin with. In general, you can post pictures of the children in your classroom without getting permission ahead of time. So if you want to put family pictures and make a photo book of the children in the classroom for the children to use in the classroom, that's fine. If a family sees a picture of their child on the wall in the classroom and complains about it, then that's a chat between you and them to figure out, do I need to take it down, or it's just for use in the classroom? Is it okay? Does anybody have anything they want to add to this? Okay. All right, so now we've got some scenarios, y'all. I know how much you love these. All right, and it's not like this never happens. Anna bites John while playing in the tunnel today. You call the family to tell them what happened. What information can you share? A, Anna bit John this morning. B, another child bit John this morning. C, a little girl bit John this morning.
B.
B.
B. B.
Yep. So C is definitely out, right? You can't go and
Yes.
tell them for sure that
The
kid did
names.
it. Though if they're a good talker, they'll rat out Anna anyway, but you can't do it. And letter C is a problem because that limits the pool of people that could have bit John, and the family can come in and say, I bet it was that one. All right. Scenario 2. It's been a long week, and this Friday you go out with your other teachers for dinner. What is an appropriate topic that you can discuss in public? A, Anna keeps biting. I think it's her family's fault. B, I need some help thinking through how to support a child who is biting. C, I cannot wait until my kids move up to the next class, especially Anna.
B.
B.
Yep.
Yeah. B.
It's the only safe one out of here, isn't it? I always told my students, because before we were in a fairly small community, that they needed to be sure that they never shared the stories that they were getting during the work week out with friends, because you're talking to your girlfriends in the pizza place, and maybe abuela or tia is right behind you and they hear you, and then you're going down. They're going to tell on you. And C gets you in trouble because any of the parents can hear that. And even just the first part, right? I cannot wait to get rid of this group of kids. It doesn't look good for you. So B is definitely the way to go if you want to talk about your class at all while you're out on dinner on a Friday. All right, scenario 3. John's mother, so he's the one that was bit, right? John's mother pops by to ask for contact information for Anna's mother. What do you do? Open-ended, y'all. What do you think? What? I know this has happened to at least one of you. What is the PC way to handle this?
Unfortunately, I can't give you that information, but if you would like to talk to somebody, you can go talk to the director.
Okay. Does anybody have anything different?
I know at one point, which was with the older kids, because we have after schoolers, we had our director had to sit down with the parents.
Had to have a sit down with the parent because they were
Yeah,
angry
but
at
it
another family?
was for the older after schooler kids. It was.
Tawana, Sylvia, anything different?
No, I would do the same.
Oh, I would say it's the
Okay.
same.
I would try to play it stupid personally at the beginning, because you don't want to let on that you know it was that they know that it was Anna. So I'd be like, "Oh, you'd like contact information for Anna's mother? Can you tell me what for?" And if they say, "Oh, I've got birthday invitation," or "I want to, do something fun," then I would be more like, "Oh, well, you can write that down and leave it with me." And I'd be delighted, because if it is a birthday invitation, that's okay. I'm not going to give them the contact information. What?
I thought we were using the scenario about the whole biting, but
We are, but
Oh, okay.
I would be playing stupid.
Okay.
So I would ask them, how can I help you? What do you need Anna's mom's information for? And if they're like, I need to talk to that biting child's mother, then that's Alicia's answer. Then it's like, oh, we can't do that. We'd be delighted to talk with you about how we're handling the situation. Let's go chat. But if the parent doesn't know that it was Anna, then maybe they're wanting it for something else. And if it's something happy and they want to know for birthday, to send birthday invitations, I would be more likely to say, oh, you can leave me the birthday invitation here, and then when Anna's mother comes by, I can hand it to her. But that depends on your program. Some programs don't let you, don't let parents hand out birthday invitations at all. So that depends on your program. But you definitely don't want to give Anna's mother's contact information to John's mother. And yeah, because somebody might get jumped in the parking lot, and that's no good. All right. Parent requested conferences. I'm sure at least one of you has had a parent say, we need to talk. Am I wrong, or has this happened?
It happened.
Yeah.
It happened.
It happens.
Yes.
Usually when it happens, is it something good that they want to pat you on the head for? In my experience, not so much. Usually if a parent says we need to talk, it's because something has happened that they want you to fix. So when a parent comes up, says we need to talk, here are some steps you can do. And the first is to collect information. So it's to figure out, what do they want to talk about? Please tell me what you'd like to talk about so I can prepare. So maybe they want to talk about something that occurred in the classroom. Maybe it's Anna biting, right? So maybe it's John's mother that wants to talk. So if you know it's about biting, you get all your resources together about biting, right? And write down your plans you have and the plans you've already put in place to start fixing the problem. Then it's really good to prepare an agenda. So an agenda is a little list. It doesn't have to be a long agenda, but a little list to remind you, because you're going to be emotionally distraught probably during the meeting. And your brain's going to be skittering all over the place. So it's good to have a little list for you to say, okay, first, I'm going to greet the parent. I'm going to share something lovely about their child with them. And then I'm going to ask them to talk about what their concern is. So, you can make the list so that you don't jump over something and after the meeting go, oh, I forgot to share that resource. I really wanted to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Meet in a distraction-free area. Why would you want to do that?
So y'all both get to the point and focus more.
Okay, so you can
focus on
down.
what y'all saying.
Yep. Focus down. It's also about that confidentiality. So if that parent's going to go on a tear about Anna, you really don't want that to be where the other families can hear. If they're going to go on a tear about a co-teacher or about you, you probably don't want all the other families to hear that either, do you? So yeah, distraction-free is best. Begin, like I mentioned on your agenda, after you greet the family, begin with something positive about their child. Everybody loves to hear good things about their child, right? So yes. Begin with something positive about their child, a little story that, something cool their child did the other day, a little photo you took the other day, something positive. And also, when you're done, end with something positive about their child. All right. Who has heard of active listening? Anybody? Okay. So active listening, okay, if you're like me, sometimes when people talk, your brain wants to latches onto one little thing they said and starts trying to figure out what is the best thing I can say to respond to that. Does that happen to anybody ever? Or is it just me?
No, it's not just you.
No.
So that's how people come up with really good comebacks and everything, right? It's a defense mechanism. When somebody comes at you with something, you latch on to one little thing that maybe you can refute or say, no, that's not right. And your brain starts processing and figuring out, okay, what is the best comeback I can do for that? But while your brain's processing and really thinking hard and the wheels are turning, the smoke is coming out your ears, while that's happening, are you still listening to what they're saying?
No.
No, because you're so focused on your response,
Yeah.
you're not hearing anything anymore. So instead, active listening, it's usually nice also to have a little piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. And as a parent's telling you what their concerns are, you start making notes. Okay, concern 1 is my child was bit twice this week. Okay, so you make a note, child was bit twice. I'm afraid that he's being bullied. I'm afraid he's gonna catch whatever these other children have because he keeps getting bit. I'm afraid. So as parents are giving you this list of stuff that they're afraid or they're concerned or angry about, you should make a list, point by point. And if you're confused, because sometimes they're so wound up that they're not making sense, if you're confused about what they're saying, do the same darn thing you would do with a 2-year-old and say, I'm hearing, or am I understanding correctly that you are saying this? And they can either correct you or tell you yes, and then you can make a note. Does that make sense? So you want to know all their issues that they're having before you start to respond. Because if you just respond to that one little thing that you knew you could knock down, they're going to walk away and they're going to say, well, they didn't answer 90% of my issue. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So as you're taking those notes, and even if they say something that you think is completely ridiculous, still make a note because it bothered them enough that they took time out of their day and got all wound up. So you might as well respond to it. The first thing you do after you have that list is acknowledge their concerns. It's the same thing as what you would do with labeling emotions for a 2-year-old or for an infant. Same darn thing. I understand that you are really upset about this right now. I understand. I can see you're really upset. You don't have to tell them your face is frowning, because that's, that'll probably get you smacked in the head. But just tell them, I can see you're really concerned right now. I feel, I can see, I understand how you're feeling. People like to have acknowledged when they're upset that, yes, I can understand you are upset. I understand why you're upset. Okay? Next part is you use all your teacher skills to keep a level head and be patient and kind. Because if you get heightened emotions too, then you're going to start getting scattered and not be able to respond well. If you have that list and most of the things on the list you know how to respond to, then just start going point by point. this is how we are handling this. This is how we're handling this. Our classroom has changed in this way. Here are some resources about bullying that I'd like you to read. Short resource, right? Bullying doesn't actually happen at this age because developmentally the children are here. This is very, even though it's not a fun time in child development, this is developmentally appropriate. And this is how we are going to help the children progress to their next stage of development and support them during this. If there's something on the list that you're like, holy crap, I don't know how to respond to that, then you can tell the parent, I'd like to respond to each of these things. At this time, I need to gather more information about your last concern, and then we'll meet again and discuss it. Because you don't want to make stuff up on the fly if it's something that's really important. And then after you've concluded with something delightful about their child, and thank them for bringing their concerns to you, then you set up either in your head or with them a time that you're going to follow up. So maybe in a few days, you set time aside that you greet that family at the door. You make sure you're there 15 minutes early so you can greet that family at the door and ask them, you know, how are things progressing? Would you like to set up another meeting to discuss this further? Now, is there anything in that that you all see that could be an issue or that you'd like to add to it? These kind of parent talks are really hard, especially if they're angry at you. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is if a parent is really angry at you in particular, or if you're not comfortable being around that parent, it's nice to invite either the director or the assistant director to come and sit with you during the conference or to sit in the room.
Yes, I think regardless, even though we should have somebody else in the room with us, just to back us up, just in case the parents are like, well, they said,
yeah,
and they're switching your words around.
Right.
Yeah, because you never know. Even though it could be a little innocent meeting, or they could have understood you different when you were trying to explain to them or give them some feedback.
Usually it's also the lead teacher in the classroom that'll do the conference. So even if the parent is angry at the assistant or the sub, it's usually the lead teacher that'll do the conference because that is her classroom and she's responsible for it. Does that make sense? Because if you have a sub that's in there with a parent, you know, that the parent wants to yell at them or talk at them, they don't have enough context or enough history with that family to be able to have a good talk. But if it is about somebody else in your classroom, I like to, after I find out about why the parent wants the meeting, I definitely have a chat with that person and get everything on their side documented, you know? Because you can't go to the parent, well, I have no idea what you're talking about. Anything else about parent requested conferences? The fun and exciting parent requested conferences?
No, the only thing I can add is when they come, sometimes they come in the classroom to say, I need to talk with you. We need to find the time because sometimes they want to do it in the classroom. So we are busy with the children. We don't have time at the moment, but we can set up the meeting.
Yes, they want to do it right now.
Yeah, yes. Sometimes the parents, they're acting like that. So I say, well, we can do when on my break or after they pick them other children because sometimes they really happen. Say, I want to do right. And I said, no, we're not at proper time because the children, they need my attention right now.
Yep.
So sometimes we need to find the time.
Yep. And it's nice if you have a director that can set that up for you. You know, if you can, because if you're with the children, you might not have the ability to set it up. So it's nice to, if your director is willing to do something like that for you to help set it up with the parent's schedule and your schedule. But I always like to try to find out why the parent wants the meeting to begin with, so you can have everything ready that you need to have ready.
Yes.
Because if the parent wants to talk about the child's speech development or the child's physical development, you want to make sure you have all your developmental milestones and everything ready for that age group so that you can speak to it. Okay. So the second kind of conference is the more pleasant kind. And that is the one where you meet with the parent, usually twice a year, sometimes 3 times, and discuss with them how their child is developing in your classroom, which is a really fun one to do. Usually the parents are there because they want to hear fun stuff about their child, and you're with their child a good chunk of the day, and you have so many stories and photos and anecdotes and observations that you've done that you're just ready to share the best ones with them. So it's nice to share developmental milestones. So if you got the child in your classroom and they're 6 months and now they're 9 months old or 10 months old, they've done a lot of milestones since they've been in your room, hopefully. And it's really fun to share with the families that developmental milestones list or the chart, and show areas especially where their child's really progressed far, and show them on the chart what are the next stages that you can expect from that child. If you do a lot of, so I have here examples of artwork, right? If you do artwork with the children, I would have some photos of the actual artwork. So they have the actual paper on the right, and then on the left they have a photo of the child painting it. And those tell you different things, right? So it's nice to be able to share the photos of the child making the thing and the thing they made. And you don't have to have it for everything, but things that show growth or things that were especially cool, it's really nice to document and to be able to share with the family, oh, look, this is where they are developmentally. When they created this, this is what they were learning, this is what they were doing. This is what you could do at home to develop it even further. So does anybody do parent conferences as a part of their program? This kind of conference?
We don't, or I haven't.
Can you see why it might be a fun thing to incorporate though?
Yes.
Because it gives the parents an opportunity to see that, yes, this teacher is teaching my child. These are the things this teacher is teaching my child. And oh my gosh, the teacher documented all this stuff and has all this information. She really knows what's going on. And that's lovely. And it's considered best practice as well. So Texas Rising Star folks, while it's not required, it gets you higher points if you do them. So remember on our lesson plans where we have that section that says, what can I learn about the child from this lesson plan? This is where all that information that you collect gets shared. And maybe not all of it, but just maybe the highlights. And if you have a concern about the child, in general, it's not good to pop a new concern on the parent out of the blue at one of these conferences. It's good to share with the parent ahead of time, you know, oh, I'm noticing that your child's not is having difficulty sitting up and keeping their muscle tone sitting up, you want to share that stuff as you're seeing it happening. You don't want to save it for 3 months to share at a conference. Does that make sense? And when parents come to a conference, in general, they're expecting good news. If you save up bad news for a conference, it doesn't end well. So if you have things of concern, they should know about it way before you do the conference. And then you can mention in the conference, you know, I'm noticing on the developmental milestones that Lindsay is still not holding her body straight, or her feet, or whatever it is developmentally that you're noticing. I'm noticing that's still an issue for her. Here's the developmental milestone chart. I'm wondering if you have mentioned it to your pediatrician yet. Do you need me to collect some resources for you? And make it more positive at that point, instead of saving it up and dropping a bomb of poo-poo on them. On the right, you can see a notebook. Some teachers will keep a notebook or a file for each child where they'll keep the observations they've made or the notes they've made throughout the time between conferences. And that's really nice, especially if you have the child for 2 or 3 conferences. By the time you have the conference where they leave your classroom, you can mention, oh, look, remember when she first started and she was doing the painting like this, and now look at how her artwork has progressed. That's lovely for a family. Does anybody have a question about a parent conference? They're not, so I'm sorry, I asked about that and I completely cut you off. I will get back to it in a second. Parents don't have to attend conferences for Texas Rising Star Points. You have to offer. So you say, if you would like a conference, conferences are being held during this month. These are the times you can sign up for. Then it counts for your points. If only one of your parents wants to talk to you about their child after you encourage everybody, then that's fine. That counts as you offering conferences. All right, question time. Any questions?
Not really.
It seems pretty simple. It's just keeping those observations documented and looking at that growth chart for that child and making sure that they're making progress in all the domains. And if they're not, then you should be mentioning to the family as you're noticing that these are the developmental domains for physical, for this age range. I'm noticing they're instead here. It might be a good idea for you to talk to your pediatrician about it. Okay. That's it, y'all. So is there either any questions, let me get to that, or any homework that you all would like to work on before you go about your day?